Good morning. It's good to be with you again. Boy, it's been a month, hasn't it? Woo. We've had a riot at the Capitol. We've had the inauguration of a new president. We've had the vaccines have rolled out. We've begun to see the implementation of the people being inoculated. Not to even mention anything about our own personal lives. A lot has been happening this month. And I have come to be aware of my own reactions. I've noticed that some of them were pretty intense. And I've also been very much aware that there's a good chance that about half of the country was having an opposite reaction than I was. We are very divided. We're very polarized, I think, in our nation. We have been for some time. And these last few months have really just brought that to light. I realize that we have a lot of work to do. All of us, our nation, I mean, not just you and I, but all of us have a lot to do to work toward bringing our country back to a sense of oneness again. Even if we are different parties or we have a lot of differences, but we also have a lot in common. We need to find those, I think, find those commonalities. As Unity Truth students, we know, we recognize and we understand the importance of doing our inner work. It is we can't outpicture anything. We can't manifest anything if we have blocks, if we have junk that is in the way. We can't be in the flow. Our ability to contribute in a positive way to anything that's going on in the world depends a lot on our inner peace, on our way of being peaceful. We sing it in a lot of Unity churches, sing every week, let there be peace and let it begin with me. So we need to be peaceful, and we know the importance of that, and we also know that we get triggered. We're human too. We get caught up in all of the intensity, all of the drama that's going on. We get triggered, and that doesn't feel all that great. We really recognize the pain, the injustices, we see the violence, and we feel, our emotions are just so intense and so out there. Sometimes it's hard not to react when we're feeling all this, not to react in a hurtful way, in a angry or frustrated way to all of this. So knowing that we need to be peace and knowing that there is this enormous job out there, I thought that it would be really beneficial for us to look together at how we can do that, how we can be an agent for change, how we can be an agent of peace in this world that needs unity badly. So I decided to look to see what might be a means of doing that. And at first I was thinking of doing the 12 Powers. I even talked to Sue a couple of weeks ago, mentioned it to her because a couple of ministers here in the area are doing a series on the 12 Powers, but it just didn't have any energy for me. So I looked around and I found something that I did get excited about, and I hope that you will share that excitement. I landed on a book. This is a book by Brene Brown. She's become one of my new heroes. I love her writing. This book is called The Gifts of Imperfection. Brene Brown, I love her writing. I did a book study on one of her books called Daring Greatly, and I also did a series of talks at St. Charles on Daring Greatly, and I think she's authentic. I think she's humorous. I love her writing. She's clear, in my opinion, laser clear on things. She says things in a way that I understand, and I can begin to incorporate. So So this book, The Gifts of Imperfection, the subtitle says, "Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are." Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. I like that. Your guide to a wholehearted life, she says. Well, it sounds pretty intriguing to me, and I was hooked when I read the subtitle. I let go of who you think you're supposed to be. Um, so we'll get started on it. So today, I just want to begin by laying a foundation that she lays in her first few chapters, explaining some terms and some concepts, and then the latter part of the book is what she calls guideposts. There are 10 of them. An example of the first one is creating authenticity, letting go of what people think. Yeah, I'd like that. How about you? Yeah. So what we're going to do today is, in this foundation, we're going to look at wholeheartedness. We're going to look at the tools, what she calls tools for living this wholehearted life. And then we're going to look briefly at love, belonging, and worthiness. So that's our plan. Looking at wholeheartedness, she says that loving ourselves is essential for living a wholehearted life. Okay, we'll keep that in mind as we go through here. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but she has a section in here, and there's also more in Daring Greatly, about how she came into this and how this work came to be. She refers to her 2007 breakdown, line through it, spiritual awakening. And what she means by that is she writes she's a researcher. She got her doctorate, I guess. She was going to be a social worker, and then decided that she really liked research better, and she focused on research for shame, blame, and vulnerability. And she had done a lot of research, talked to a lot of people. She had just lots and lots of data on these words and what that meant, and stories and all that. And at some point, she began to think that it might be nice to have some sort of guide for how to live in a way that, what she termed wholeheartedness. She made a list titled "Do and Don't," and she was merely pulling from her story. She wasn't really engaging with what she was writing down. Just, these are the words that if you want to have a wholehearted life, you do these things. If you want to have if you don't want to live a wholehearted life, don't do these. Examples, I think, on the don't side were perfectionism, self-sufficiency, rigid structure, those schedules, those kind of words. So she had all that, she got all that on the paper, and then when she sat and looked at it, she realized that she was living from the don't side and thinking that she was doing it right, meeting her deadlines and living structure in a structured way. It was all about just going at it wrong, and she wasn't doing these other things. So she put her materials away for over a year, got into therapy, and she even refers to the first session when she and Diana got together, and she went in and she said, "See these dudes, this is what I want, and I don't want to have to go through a lot of junk. I don't want to have to do that mother crap, any of that. I just want to get to this." And they laugh about what it took. It took about a year of therapy. She said it was hard work, messy at times, but when she came through on the other side, she had this wonderful sense of being real, and it was she liked it a lot. So that's where the 2007 breakdown, scratched through spiritual awakening, came from. And her therapist said, "No, what you've been through is a spiritual awakening. It's not a breakdown." So that's where it came from. She says that owning our story And loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing we will ever do. And of course, she was also talking about herself and what she went through in that therapy. But owning our story, being ourselves, saying it, to the right people, is the bravest thing we'll ever do. There is a quote on page 1. Wholehearted living is about engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. It means cultivating the courage, compassion, and connection to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done and how much is left undone, I am enough. It's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I'm imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid, but that doesn't change the truth that I am also brave and worthy of love and belonging. That, I think, encapsulates this whole notion of what wholehearted living is about, what it is and what it's about. And this book then is showing us how we can move in that direction, how we can do this, how we can move toward wholehearted living. She says it's a process. It's a journey of a lifetime. It's not a one-time choice. And she says that we have the tools that we need to work with on our journey are courage, compassion, and connection. She says that on those three, she said that practicing courage, compassion, and connection in our daily lives is how we cultivate worthiness, and we must practice. So starting with courage, she's talking about ordinary courage. She says, this isn't the kind of courage that it takes when adrenaline is, like turning over a car when your child is trapped inside. That is not, this kind of courage is ordinary. She calls it ordinary courage. She says, speaking honestly and openly about who we are, about what we're feeling, and about our experiences, good and bad, is the definition of courage. And it does take a lot of courage sometimes to do that. She has some examples of what takes courage, and these I thought were very true, spot on. Reaching out for help. I don't know about you, but it has been difficult for me in past years. Now I ask for help, but I think that society has kind of an expectation that if you ask for help, then you must be weak, or you're not enough. If you have to ask for help, but it takes great courage to ask for help, and it's wonderful. When I broke the bones in my ankle in 2007, I had to ask for help, and people were amazing, and apparently it's kind of reciprocal, because I got the gift of their attention and caring, and they got the gift of serving, helping me, So it was, asking for help is beautiful. It takes courage to say, I don't know. I remember when I worked at Bell, I was trained to be an instructor, and one of the things they taught us was it is so important to say, I don't know, if you don't know something, because the students are going to quickly pick up if you're trying to give them a story or make something up. Say, I don't know. I can look that up for you and have the answer tomorrow. It takes courage to say, I don't know. Asking for what you need. Whew, that one was one that really resonated strongly. As a woman of a certain age and living in a society where we were expected kind of to take care of others, I don't think I even really began to look for what I needed, until I was well into my adult years. So asking for what you need is very courageous. First you have to know. It takes a little courage to explore, and then ask for it. If you don't ask for what you need, you may never get it. And then sharing stories of imperfection. This isn't the one-upmanship, but this is definitely when you are willing to let people know, yeah, I have that trouble too. It can mean the world to somebody if they're struggling with something. So courage, ordinary courage, is one of the tools. Practicing courage in our everyday lives helps us in our worthiness, helps us in our quest to live wholeheartedly. And then compassion. In her book, she says that the American Buddhist nun, and I'm not sure I'm saying this right, Pema Chodron, in her book, The Places That Scare You, Chodron writes, when we practice generating compassion, we can expect to experience the fear of our pain. Compassion practice is daring. It involves learning to relax and allow ourselves to move gently toward that which scares us. And it does. If we're going to be compassionate with someone, it means, by definition, that we try to understand, we try to feel what they're feeling as best we can. And if they're hurting, it isn't, we have to learn to do that. We have to learn to move gently toward it. I think that was a great way of saying that. So, Brené Brown also points out that compassion, true compassion is a relationship between equals, not as a healer and the wounded one. It is becoming alike. It is showing that, yes, I see what you're experiencing. I feel it. Maybe I've been there before. Just not trying to solve, not trying to change, just be with it. And then she goes on to talk about boundaries and compassion. She says, one of the greatest and least discussed barriers to compassion is the fear of setting boundaries and holding people accountable. Ugh. And this was humorous, I thought. She said that, I believe that understanding the connection between boundaries, accountability, acceptance, and compassion has made me a kinder person. Before the breakdown, I was sweeter, judgmental, resentful, and angry on the inside, but sweeter on the outside. But if we're living wholeheartedly, we want to be authentic. We want to be real. So being able to learn to set boundaries and hold people accountable is really a worthwhile activity. It sometimes feels easier, and it is easier to just, ignore what people are saying or not let them know what you expect or want. But having boundaries, setting boundaries, and holding people accountable makes the relationship much clearer and much more authentic. And I think that's really powerful. There was, I can't remember if it's in this book or The Daring Greatly, but she had a story of once when she was in a restaurant with some of her friends. They had gotten together to have a meal together and catch up. I guess they, busy lives and all that. Anyway, they were she was at this table with her friends when a woman walked up to the table and said, "Aren't you Brene Brown? I've seen your books or whatever." And she acknowledged the woman, but was very clear and firm that yes, that is me, and right now I am having a personal meal with my friends. I'll need to talk with you later, or something to that effect. So it's very important, to have boundaries. And then another thing that she mentions is that not following through with appropriate consequences, that can lead to dismissing the request in the first place. And if you've ever seen parenting where the parent threatens the child, now if you don't do such and such, I'm going to, and then nothing ever happens. The child does it repeatedly, and the parent never comes through with what it is that he or she says she's going to do. What does the child learn? Obviously, it means nothing. And so it's not just children who learn that, pick it up. It is adults too, because I've seen it in the workplace. There are times when, if the expectations of the employee and consequences, if they're not met, aren't held, then pardon me, then other employees who see that the say Joe is continuing to not do what he's expected to do, and nothing ever happens, why are they going to keep knocking themselves out? So it is a very hazardous way of being. So. And then connection. She says, I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. Is that not beautiful? I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. I guess it goes on. When they can give and receive without judgment, when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. That's connection. And probably from your own relationships, spouse, the close ones especially, your spouse, your siblings perhaps, maybe a parent, a close friend, when we feel heard and seen, heard, and valued, there is a beautiful connection. She says that we're wired for connection, which I think is probably true. COVID has made it difficult sometimes for us to connect, and if we're not doing it in person, sometimes we are having to make do with this kind of connection with a Zoom, or this one isn't Zoom, but Zoom is better because it's interactional. So anyway, she says, one of the greatest barriers to connection is the cultural importance of going it alone. Kind of the same thing earlier, said self-sufficiency is, it's one of those don'ts that she had on her list. Going it alone kind of sets us up for failure, because being wired for connection and being able to utilize that just means that we take advantage and synthesis, I think it's called, of combining our energies and our thoughts and all of that. Going it alone is not to be desired. And then she has a sentence that I want to share with you. She She says, until we can receive with an open heart, we are never really giving with an open heart. When we attach judgment to receiving help, we knowingly or unknowingly attach judgment to giving help. And then lastly, we're going to touch on love, belonging, and being enough. This has a lot to do with worthiness. She says, if we want to fully experience love and belonging, we must believe we're worthy of it. We must own our story, not distance ourselves from it. So if we are trying to hide behind some facade, trying to be something, we're not going to make it, because this wholeheartedness is about being ourselves. We must own our own story, warts and all, because this is who we are. And if we want those kind of connections, as we practice those kind of connections, we'll quickly learn that there's really nothing of value in these false relationships. So we don't have to make up stories about ourselves, own our own story. And she also says that worthiness doesn't have prerequisites. If you end up getting this book, which I would recommend, there's a list on page 24 of what she calls worthiness prerequisites. And it's the kind of thing, I'll be worthy when I lose 20 pounds. I'll be worthy when this happens or that happens. And it's not like that. We want, our aim, our goal is to live in such a way that we begin to recognize and live from that place of I am worthy right now. She mentions in this section, the belonging part, she mentions fitting in and belonging. Some people tend to use those synonymously, but they're not. Belonging, she says, belonging doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. Fitting in often has to do with changing something to be like those that we want to fit in with. But belonging is an exercise of we all belong together and being our true selves. She has some definitions in here, but I'm going to go to two last quotes that I thought were just beautiful. Practicing self-love means learning how to trust ourselves, to treat ourselves with respect, and to be kind and affectionate toward ourselves. And then the last one, we can only belong when we offer our most authentic selves and when we're embraced for who we are. I think that is so true. There is a commercial that shows, I think it's for depression medicine or something, and it shows a person walking around with a little fan kind of thing with a happy face on the outside. And that's sort of like what it is we're hiding behind this face of I'm fine, all is well, and it's not really. So we can only belong when we offer our most authentic selves and when we're embraced for who we are, owning our own story, being who we are. So you might ask, well, what does this, what does this have to do with unity? Well, Jesus taught that don't worry about the speck in someone else's eye if we have a log in our own eye. We need to be as clean and clear as we possibly can. We need to purge ourselves as best we can of old beliefs, old self-destructive thoughts and behaviors, and all of that. Jesus said that the most important commandment was that we love God, that we love our neighbors as ourselves, and that we love others as He has loved us, as Jesus has loved us. So this whole love thing is critical. Love God, love our neighbor, love ourselves. I think it's imperative that to be as Christ-like as we can, this is what we need to do. So I think this Gifts of Imperfection is a way to get there. I hope that you'll join me on this path, on this journey, and I look forward to seeing you next month. God bless.